Unicorn Zombie Apocalypse.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Eco Talks with Sneha Manekar. In today's lecture, we'll discuss about elasticity of demand. So first, let us understand what is meant by elasticity of demand. Elasticity of demand measures the responsiveness of quantity demanded to change in any of the factors by keeping other factors constant. That is, determinants of demand, which we have discussed in the previous video. So determinants of demand are price, then next is price of related goods, price of that is related goods are substitutes and complementary, price of related goods. Then we have income, taste, preference, habit. So these are the various determinants of demand. So if we are talking about responsiveness of quantity demanded with change in price, and the remaining factors, they will remain constant, that time we say that it is price elasticity. So any of the determinant of the demand if we consider, and according to with that, if we consider the change in quantity demanded and change in the particular determinant, then we say that it is the elasticity of demand. If we are talking with respect to price and quantity demanded, it is price elasticity. If we are talking about income, then it is income elasticity of demand. And when we are talking about the related goods, it is the cross elasticity of demand. So it is relative responsiveness or sensitiveness of quantity demanded to the determinants of demand. Well, because of change in determinants of demand, how the quantity demanded will change. That is indicated by the elasticity of demand. So there are as many as elasticity as its determinant. How many determinants? That many elasticities of demand. But most important, we have price elasticity, income elasticity, and cross elasticity of demand. In price elasticity, we have price and quantity demanded. The responsiveness of quantity demanded to the change in price. In income, it is related with income of the consumer, and in cross elasticity, it is the price of related goods. This is the cross elasticity of demand. We'll see one by one. Now first it is price elasticity of demand. Now price elasticity of demand is degree of responsiveness of quantity demanded of a good to change in its price. That is, we can say it is defined as ratio of proportionate change in quantity demanded caused by given proportionate change in price. So whatever due to change in price, what is the change in quantity demanded? Ratio of that will give us the price elasticity of demand. Formula for price elasticity is percent change in quantity demanded divided by percent change in price. Or we can say proportionate change in quantity demanded divided by proportionate change in price, which can be given as change in quantity demanded divided by initial quantity into 100 divided by change in price divided by initial price into 100. So this is the formula to calculate the price elasticity of demand. Second one is the income elasticity of demand. Here, when there is change in level of income of a consumer, there is change in the quantity demanded and other factors remaining the same. So the degree of change or responsiveness of quantity demanded of good to the change in income of the consumer is called as income elasticity of demand. As the name itself, it makes clear. It is income and the quantity demanded. So it can be defined as ratio of percent change in quantity of good purchased or demanded per unit of time to percent change in income of the consumer. So we can represent here income elasticity is percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percent change in income, or proportionate change in quantity demanded by proportionate change in income, or we can say change in quantity demanded divided by initial quantity demanded into 100 whole divided by change in income divided by initial income into 100. So this is the formula to calculate the income elasticity of demand. And third important elasticity is cross elasticity of demand. In the concept of cross elasticity of demand is used for measuring the responsiveness of quantity demanded of a good to change in the price of related good. Suppose there are two goods, related goods A and B. So quantity demanded of A and price of B is compared here in cross elasticity. So it is defined as percentage change in the demand of one good as the result of percent change in the price of another good. So due to change in price of B, what is the change in quantity demanded of A? That is studied through the cross elasticity. Formula is percent change in quantity demanded of X divided by percent change in the price of Y. Here the two commodities are X and Y. So percent change in quantity demanded of X divided by percent change in price of Y. That is equal to proportionate change in quantity demanded of X divided by proportionate change in price of Y. Or we can say change in quantity of X divided by initial quantity of X into 100 whole divided by change in price of Y divided by initial price into 100. So this is the formula for the cross elasticity of demand. Next, we have degrees of price elasticity. We will study the degrees of price elasticity of demand. So based on the value of elasticity or degree of elasticity, there are 5 categories. One is perfectly elastic, then perfectly inelastic, unitary elastic or unit elastic, relatively elastic, and relatively inelastic demand. So these are the 5 categories depending on the degree of elasticity. Elasticity we denote, price elasticity we denote as EP. So we'll see one by one. First is the perfectly inelastic demand. Now when quantity demanded of good does not change at all to whatever change in the price, this demand is said to be perfectly inelastic. The word itself says inelastic means there is no change in demand, whatever may be the price. Such case is called as perfectly inelastic, and here elasticity of demand is 0 and the curve is parallel to y-axis, or we can say it is a demand curve is vertical in case of perfectly inelastic demand. Then perfectly elastic demand, it is opposite of inelastic, that is small change in price leads to extreme change in quantity demanded, that is infinite change. A perfectly elastic is a horizontal line which indicates that quantity demanded is extremely responsive to the price. Even slight change leads to infinite change in quantity demanded. This elasticity, in this, the value of elasticity is, that is EP is equal to infinity in case of perfectly elastic, and in case of perfectly inelastic it is equal to 0. Next we have unitary elastic. Unitary elastic means when quantity demanded of good changes by exactly the same percent as the price, then demand is said to be unitary elastic. So 1 unit change in price leads to 1 unit change in quantity demanded, then this is the unitary elastic demand. Here value is, as the name says, unitary. Unitary means 1. Here price elasticity will be equal to 1. Then fourth category we have relatively elastic. If the proportionate change in price causes relatively greater proportionate change in quantity demanded of good, such demand is said to be relatively elastic. Means suppose there is proportionate change in price. Price has changed by 1 unit and quantity demanded has changed by 2 units. Then such case will be relatively elastic. That is more than the price change, quantity changes more. And in this case, elasticity will be greater than 1. And you can see here this relatively elastic curve is steeper. Sorry, it is flatter, and relatively inelastic, it is steeper in nature. Relatively elastic, inelastic, it is opposite of relatively elastic. Given the proportionate change in price causes relatively less proportionate change in quantity demanded, and here value will be EP is less than 1. Suppose there is price has changed by 1 unit, then quantity demanded will change by only suppose 0.8 units. So it is changes less, quantity demanded changes less compared to change in price. So in such cases it is called as relatively inelastic demand, and the demand curve here will be steeper and here it is flatter in case of relatively elastic demand. Then the basic determinants of elasticity of demand of a commodity with respect to its own price. What are the determinants of elasticity? First is availability of substitutes. The demand of commodity is more elastic if there are close substitutes. If there is certain commodity A and for that there are many substitutes, then in such cases the elasticity will be more. It is more elastic. Value of more elastic is greater than 1. So it is more EP will be greater than 1 if there are more number of substitutes. Then the nature of need of the commodity. In general, luxury goods are price elastic, while necessities are price inelastic. Now necessity goods, in any condition we need them. So for that, whatever may be the price, we will purchase them. So the necessities become inelastic, whereas luxury goods, if we can't purchase it, we won't go to luxury good. So here they are price elastic. Then the next is the time period. Demand is more elastic in long run, whereas in short run it is inelastic. Then the number of uses which a commodity can be put. For example, there is commodity A that can be used for various purposes. Now suppose we have a hired labor. That labor we can use for in livestock maintenance, we can use for weeding, we can use for spraying. So we have many uses. So more the uses, more will be the elasticity. And proportion of income spent on a particular commodity, that will also determine the elasticity of demand. Then we'll see the practical importance of elasticity of demand, where with this elasticity of demand is practically used. First, in the taxation policy. Now, the concept has immense importance in the sphere of government finance. When finance minister levies tax on certain commodities, they have to see whether the demand for that commodity is elastic or inelastic. If demand is inelastic, he can increase the tax. Thus, they can collect the larger revenue. If the demand is elastic, then they won't put more tax on such commodities because there is no scope for collecting larger revenue by putting larger tax. Then second is the price discrimination of the monopolist. Now, monopolist finds that demand for his commodity is inelastic. Inelastic means whatever may be the price, they will purchase. So he will at once fix the price at higher level in order to maximize his net profit. In case if he has elastic demand, he will lower the price in order to increase his sales and derive the maximum net profit. So in case of price discrimination also, elasticity concept is used. Then importance to the businessman. When demand for good is elastic, they increase sale by lowering his price. Whereas when demand is inelastic, they charge the higher price. So based on that, they will plan their sale, whether it is elastic or inelastic. And also it helps to trade unions. The trade unions can raise the wages of the labor in an industry where demand for the productive is relatively inelastic. There is some industry, they are producing the goods for which there is inelastic demand. And in such cases, the trade unions, they can raise the wages of the labor because they can price any price for that commodity. But whereas on the other hand, if the product elasticity is elastic, that is relatively elastic, then they cannot ask for the higher wages. Then fifth is in the case of international trade. The terms of trades between two countries are based on the elasticity of demand of the traded good. Now, country gains in the international trade by exporting goods which are less elastic in foreign market and importing those goods which are demand elastic. In foreign, if they are less elastic, that is less elastic means inelastic. Whatever may be the price, the foreigners are going to purchase our goods. So such goods are exported, and goods which are imported are such that they're elastic. That is, if price is high, the demand from the local market is less. So in such cases, which commodities to export and which commodities to import, that will be studied based on the elasticity. Then it gives the guideline to the producer. The concept of elasticity provides guidelines to the producer for amount to be spent on advertisement. If the commodity is elastic, the producer shall have to spend large sum of money on the advertisement for increasing the sales. The producer has to advertise his commodity. so that large people will gain the attention for their commodity. For inelastic goods, whatever may be the price they are going to purchase, so producer need not advertise it. But in case of elastic goods, they have to advertise them. Then use in factor pricing. The factors of production which have inelastic demand can obtain higher price in the market than those which have elastic demand. These concepts explain the reason of variation in factor pricing, even for the factors of production. Factors of production are land, labor, capital, and the entrepreneur. So their profit for their payment will depend on the elasticity of demand. Based on the elasticity, whatever the payment has we have to make for these four factors will depend. And because of elasticity only, there is variation in the factor pricing. Then how we can measure the price elasticity. There are three methods. First is the expenditure method, second is the point elasticity, and third is the arc elasticity. In total expenditure method, this method we use to measure the elasticity of demand by examining the change in total expenditure due to change in price. Total expenditure is compared with the change in price. Change in price. So we say unitary elastic or unity elastic when the total amount of money spent remains same. Even if price has changed, total expenditure has remained constant, then here EP will be equal to 1. Elastic demand, when total amount of money spent increases with the fall in price or decreases with the rise in price, that is total expenditure is inversely related with the price. That time elasticity will be greater than 1, that is elastic demand. And when total amount of money spent decreases with the fall in price, then it is the inelastic demand, that is when total expenditure has direct relation with the price. At that time we have EP is less than 1. So these are the three criteria which are used to measure the elasticity of demand in total expenditure method. Next is the point elasticity of demand. This is the geometrical method of measuring the elasticity. This method is used when price and quantity changes are very small. So this point elasticity of linear demand curve, it is shown by a ratio of segments of line to the right and to the left, or we can say, now this is the demand curve. This is the demand curve here, D dash, and at the point F we want to find out the demand elasticity. Then demand elasticity will be lower section divided by the upper section. Just left and right, if you get confused, just you have to remember lower section divided by the upper section. So in the figure at the point F, we have FD dash divided by FD will give elasticity of demand at point F. Now in a linear demand curve, we are using formula. If we see at the midpoint here two sections will be equal here. So here elasticity will be equal to 1. At y-axis, the point where demand curve meets y-axis, it will be equal to infinity, and where it meets x-axis, it will be equal to 0. Likewise, between the midpoint and x-axis, it is less than 1, and between y-axis and midpoint, it is greater than 1. So this is the point elasticity of demand. And third is the arc elasticity. If prices changes, price changes is appreciable, that is more price change we measure through arc elasticity. So this is the demand curve. We have to find out the elasticity between this point A and B. Then we use the arc elasticity, and it is given by the formula proportionate change in quantity divided by proportionate change in price, or change in quantity divided by change in price, into P1 plus P2, that is for initial price and final price divided by 2, whole divided by Q1 plus Q2 divided by 2, or we can these two to get cancelled, and we'll get change in quantity demanded by change in price into P1 plus P2 divided by Q1 plus Q2. This is the average elasticity. Between these 2 points, at this average will take off this point. So this is average elasticity, that is midpoint of the chord joining the point A and B. it should be clear that measure of arc elasticity is an approximation of true elasticity of section AB of the demand curve, which is used when we only know the 2 points A and B from the demand curve, but not the intermediate one. We don't know the intermediate point, only we know the 2 points. In such cases, we use the arc elasticity. That's all for today's session. If you have any doubts, you can ask me in the comment section. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.